Hello, fellow workers of Glorious Hope. Two more sessions, and we are finished with the second workbook, which focuses on horizontal relationship. Why is that important, you might ask? You might have heard the Christian cliche that Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship. Many Christians keep quoting that phrase, yet their actions and behaviors as Christians are inclined more towards practicing religion rather than relationship with God. Man's general idea of religion is reaching up to God and trying to become acceptable to Him, regardless of what spiritual roads we take to get to heaven. While God's eternal view differs in that He reaches down to us by sending His Son for us so that we could be united with Him. In my observation, when fellow Christians practice religion rather than having a relationship with God, the relationship between fellow believers are often messy. However, when Christianity is practiced more like a relationship with God, then we observe Christ-like relationship exists within the community of believers, which allow us to love one another deeply, walk in the relationship with one another, bear each other's burdens, encourage and build each other to grow, and serve our world together. In religion, people compete, most often unconsciously, to earn their merit to win God's favor. Every other religion in the world teaches a work-based salvation. Christianity is the only religion in the world where you are justified by grace through faith in Christ alone. Religion keeps you or keep us in chains, but Christ has set us free. Jesus calls us friends. In John chapter 15 verse 15, Jesus said, "No longer do I call you slaves, for slaves do not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, because all things that I've heard from my Father I made known to you." A relationship with Him is a relationship of intimacy and security, of being totally known and totally accepted. It is not a relation of equals. However, Jesus, who is fully God as well as fully man, as much as He remains Lord of heaven and earth, but unlike an unmerciful dictator, Jesus uses His authority to usher His followers into greater freedom. Contrary to most concepts of power, Jesus wielded His power through complete humility, thus inviting us into an intimate fellowship with Him. It is a relationship where we can be loved completely, challenged to grow in our faith, and transformed into the exact person He created us to be. But this will not always be the case, since we all grew up in a dysfunctional environment. Then our concept of relationship will always be distorted. If we are not aware, if we are not aware of these things, life in a dysfunctional family is emotionally turbulent. Relationship between family members are tense and can be filled with neglect, yelling, and screaming. You might feel forced to happily accept negative treatment. There's no open space to express your thoughts and feelings already or freely. You aren't able to thrive and feel safe within your own family. Growing up, you might have experienced some of these dynamics where you are forced to take sides in conflict between parents, where you observe contradicting patterns when what is said contradict to what actually happens. This happens when a parent denies something the child observes or talks about in the past events, then they actually happened. When your feelings and thoughts are ignored, discounted, or criticized, when your parents are inappropriately intrusive, overly involved and protective, or overly protective. Also, when you have parents that are inappropriately distant and uninvolved with us or with you. When there is so much control and demands placed on our time, choice of friends, and our behavior. When we experience rejection or preferential treatment in our family. When there are too many restrictions and direct communication with other family members. When the use of drugs or alcohol are encouraged or enabled, or when we see it being done by the people around us in our family, the physical, verbal, and emotional abuse becomes a norm in our family. With this kind of family dynamics that some of us experience as a child, it will be difficult for us to trust others and ourselves. Whatever experience we had in the past have leftovers for us as an adult. We find it hard to form relationship with others because we find it difficult to trust the behaviors and words of others, their own judgments and action, or our own sense of self-worth. Not surprisingly, we might also experience the same problems in work, where we do or the things that we do academically, or our performance in the workplace or in ministry. Our relationship is also handicapped because of our struggle with our own identities. It will be difficult for us to form healthy relationship with other people and even with ourselves. In fact, one principle that I learned in the Bible said, whoever claims to love God, yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. Whoever does not love their brother and sister, whom they have seen, cannot love God, whom they have not seen. How can we then form healthy relationship with God, whom we cannot see, when we find it difficult to build healthy relationship with one another, whom we see? In the first part of this program, we were made to become aware of how this kind of environment distorted our sense of self-worth and our view of God. The deepest part of our hearts has been corrupted to think that we need the Word. We need to satisfy the appetites of our flesh and have unreasonably high sense of self-importance. And this is what James wrote about this one. Do not love the world, or do not love this world or the things it offers you. For when you love the world, you do not have the love of the Father in you. For the world offers only a craving for physical pleasure, a craving for everything we see, and pride in our achievements and possession. These are not from the Father, but from the Word. What the Apostle describes in this verse is the manner in which we habitually try to feel the deepest desires of our heart because we are attached to them, or they become a habit in which we satisfy the deepest part of our heart. If you remember the tool needed for us to satisfy the deepest desire of our heart is for God to be the one to fill that up. We need to practice letting go of our old ways of satisfying that need of our deepest desires and letting God be the one to fill our deepest desires. We need to be connected to Him and His Word all the time in order for change to happen in us, as Jesus taught us in His taught this to his disciples in the book of John. He said, "Remain in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it remains in the vine, so neither can you unless you remain in me." Jesus used this analogy of the vine to describe the relationship between us and him. When we remain in him and or abide in him, sooner or later we will bear fruit, because a branch alone cannot be fruitful. But if it is connected always to the vine, it will bear much fruit, because the vine is the source of all the nutrients that the branch needed to bear fruit. The bearing of fruit is the actions or behavior that resulted from our relationship with Jesus. We need to trust Jesus and his words in allowing him to be the one to fill our desires, like allowing the nutrients from the vine to flow to the branches. My longing for approval from people of interest to me was my struggle for a long time. That's why I acted immaturely, which resulted in sin. I was not used to letting go of my old ways and letting God fill up my dominant desire for approval. I always rationalize my actions and try to find ways to justify what I have done. In the process, I hurt people who matter most and care for me. I hurt people that I work with in my workplace and in the ministry. Even before, when I was not yet aware of my heart, I had a toxic relationship with my spouse and my family. But later, as I learned all these concepts and find fulfillment in God, my relationship with him gradually improved. As a result, my relationship with my family improved also. Unfortunately, my wife left me already. Later, my relationship with my co-workers and the people I worked with in the ministry also improved. Letting go and letting God takes time. It takes time for us to grow in our relationship with God. We will have our ups and downs in our journey. Yet God, through Jesus Christ, is exercising his loving kindness and forbearance in teaching us or teaching me the ropes of our relationship with him. It is important for us to have an open communication with him daily, listening to him and applying what we hear. It is common to feel discouraged if we find ourselves defaulting back to our old patterns. But God will be around to lift us up. Change is a slow, gradual process. Just like the fruit that grows in a tree, it takes time. So it is important to be part of a group, like our cluster or a small group. They play a crucial role in keeping like-minded people together throughout each stage of our journey, enabling them to support one another and feel accepted by a group of understanding and caring individuals, where we practice healthy relationship. May God bless you in this wonderful journey of yours, and may He bless the work of your hand. Thank you, everyone.